Hey, wonderful people. Thank you for joining me here again on Learning with Lear. My name is Ryan Verdon. I'm the founder and director of Lear Cultural Coaching. You can find out more about me and find out more about Lear by visiting our website. That link is in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram, and now I officially got a TikTok. I'm on TikTok, y'all. You can also check out the link to those pages in the description and the handles. Go ahead and follow me. Would appreciate that. I enjoy building community on social media, embracing that a little bit more now. Um, Y'all, this week has been crazy. It's been crazy all over. We got college campuses, protests erupting across the country, um, and response of militarized police violence. We got Israel invading Rafah. We got white frat boys making monkeys noises and shouting down calls for peace, followed up by chants of USA, which is the most on brand America thing you could ever do. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about all of that. But I want to offer a framework for understanding that because all of that is connected to whiteness. And I know I have a couple videos on here in this series where I've tried to be really concrete about what whiteness is. And I'm going to add to that today because it is important we have multiple ways of understanding whiteness because whiteness is a fluid thing. It shifts, it responds to pressure, it responds to um changes and growth in public consciousness and the discourse. And so we got to be understanding it in a we got to be flexible in our understanding of it, let me say that. But really at its core, we got to understand what whiteness is, and what whiteness is division. And I've said that before, and I want to offer an understanding or a way of understanding where that division came from, and fundamentally the shift that happened in our system of thought that allowed for that division. And so I'm going to offer that before I go back into all these current events and articulating how they're connected to whiteness, right? And also what the solution could be, right? Because division, if whiteness is division and it's the core of what we're experiencing, then the solution is about connection. And it's about and I'm not on no corny like can't we all just get along stuff, because I understand that justice and repair is necessary before we get to can't we all just get along in unity, right? Accountability before unity. So let's talk about that. If you've heard me talk or you've been in space with me, you've probably heard me talk about my fellowship at the Cultural Wellness Center. For 2 years, I was a fellow there. Shout out to everybody over there at the Cultural Wellness Center. I hope y'all are doing good. But I studied the question, what were your people before they were white? If you want to hear more about that, holla at me, email me, we can set up a time. But I want to talk about one of my major understandings from that fellowship. And that was that whiteness comes from and white supremacy comes from a shift in our system of thought. We shift from spirituality, symbol, mythos, harmonium, and we move to object, science, rationale, technology. And so what does that mean? When we're all indigenous to somewhere. European people have an indigeneity. My ancestry is Celtic. Um, Nationality, what we would now call Irish, right? Um, but indigenous people across the planet made sense of the world, had a system of thought that was very, very similar, and there were commonalities. They might have looked different in execution, but at its foundation, they were pretty similar. There was a spirituality. There was a belief in creation and in a greater power that animated all of us. Um, we saw symbols, right? Celtic people, for example, you didn't cover wells because that's how the spirits of your ancestors came and visited you, right? There was symbols, places, trees are very powerful symbols. Uh, we know this is ancient wisdom that we know and we still look at, right? Why do you think so many people are talking about astrology and see symbols places? It's an ancient wisdom. It's a cultural practice that will never go away because the creator animates us. That's just what it is, right? Um, but then and then so we saw symbols, then we told stories. There was a mythos behind it, a way of understanding, of making sense that was more than just this intellectual thing. It spoke to us and was creative and all of that, and our goal was harmony. harmony with creation, harmony with each other. That doesn't mean that there wasn't conflicts. I can hear folks out there, but what about this and what about that? Yeah, there's conflicts. Where that's not perfect, but fundamentally, this is how we our system of thought, how we understand the world. And then that shifts. And I don't got time right now to go into the number of reasons why that shifts or why that. Oftentimes that shift is called the scientific revolution. But what happens is we move to an objectification of creation, right? So that same tree that was a symbol is now just lumber, a way of a means to an end, right? Um, Science, this way of intellectualizing was more important than the stories we told. If it wasn't tangible, if you couldn't prove it, it didn't have meaning. And we all know the shortfalls of that, right? And then we had a rationale. We rationalize that over dependence on science and that objectification, and the proof that this is a better way of living is in technological advancements, right? That shift and that frame, object science, rationale, technology, is whiteness, right? Um, think that's what disconnects us. We could see creation and other human beings and objectify them to justify a slave trade that was fundamentally poison to our souls, right? Um, and so throughout history, we can see the consequences of that shift. And so let's jump to today, though. We have right now, as I'm recording this, there Israel continues to invade Rafah, the southern point of the Gaza Strip, where Israel told Palestinian people to go to be safe. They're now Netanyahu is vowing on a ground invasion of Rafah. They're bombing it. Children are dying. We're witnessing this. It's not debatable, right? But today I also heard that the plan for the Rafah crossing is turn it over to a private U.S. security firm. For that's all about money. Do you know how much money is going to be made there, and what kind of I can't even go into how upsetting that is, right? But I want to point this out, right? So the Palestinian people, their land, the actual geography of Palestine has been objectified. There's a rationalization. They're dehumanizing the logic of whiteness and white supremacy and Islamophobia is often used to dehumanize the Palestinian people. It makes it so that they are not worthy, right? They don't need to count in our calculations. And we rational that so that's used to rationalize it. We rationalize it talking about that Hamas is an existential threat to Israel. And Hamas, let me be clear, okay? October 7th was terrible. No civilians should be held hostage. No civilians should lose their life and all that. And October 7th didn't happen in a vacuum, right? Also, let me be clear that many of the voices and leaders of these protests and the loudest voices demanding a ceasefire, demanding a free Palestine, come from the Jewish community who understand their connection and see their own pain reflected in the pain and the suffering of Palestinian people, right? So this is not about Jewish people, Judaism, and there's no place for anti-Semitism at all in this. That does not mean that you cannot have a critique of Zionism as a political ideology or the nation state of Israel and its actions, right? Especially when they want to turn it over and make potentially billions of dollars on this. But all of that is rationalized through a logic of whiteness, through the racism and Islamophobia and the othering, the objectification of a place and a people. And then the technology is not only the catalyst to be able to do that, the drone bombing, the Iron Dome, like all the billions of dollars that America sends to Israel to be able to execute these things comes with also the technology of America, right? And the goal is money. It's to make money, right? That's how they're going to do this. And also control. They have a military outpost in the region. I don't want to get too much into that, but that's that, right? We also see this playing out. Let's come down here to the south. I'm in Atlanta right now. And the state over at Ole Miss, you see these white frat boys making gorilla noises at a black woman, calling her Lizzo. She's a little bit bigger. And salute to her. She has come out and said, like, yo, I felt bad for them. I love myself. And go ahead. I want to talk to my people, though, them white boys. y'all, if this ain't the perfect example of object science rationale technology, right? They're such a product of America and American exceptionalism that they can't even see how. And so let me back up because I want to offer some context. So the peaceful protests demanding a ceasefire and an end to a genocidal campaign is being shouted down at Ole Miss campus and campuses all over the country, right? Particularly here in the South, are being shouted down by predominantly white people and a lot of white men, right? Um, and that's happening. They're shouting them down, and much of that chant is rooted in chants of USA. So it ain't even about. Let's be clear about what it's about. It's not about protecting Jewish people. It's not about support for the state of Israel or making repair for the anti-Semitism of Americans that facilitated the Holocaust. It's not about any of that. It is about their conceptualization of what America is, right? Um, and because we're so steeped in this mindset of like object, science, rationale, technology, that's got to be right. And anything that suggests otherwise is to be dismissed, is to be shouted down, and it doesn't matter how you do that, right? So you got these white boys seeing brown and black people. In this case, right, I'm talking about specifically this Ole Miss protest. This black woman who they've been taught is not human. They've been taught that, and the legacy, particularly in the South, is of objectification, literally of their body, of their person, that they are not human, right? They're rationalized it through white nationalist Christian evangelical teachings, right? And policies and politics that support that. And then it's all couched in this rationalization of patriotism and America being the greatest country in the world. Look at how, and we support that through, again, mainly the technology of war, the technology of killing, the technology of violence and domination. And that's happening. So literally, I want to just point out how dumb whiteness makes us. There's no other way to put it. We're just dumb. You got these white boys shouting down peaceful protests, right? Of making gorilla noises at a black woman and doing so with chants of USA. The chants of USA are in support of a genocidal campaign where almost 40,000 people have died. The vast majority of them civilians, women and children. Over half of the population of Gaza was under 18. Like, so if that's not the most on brand America white shit ever, I don't know what is. That is wild. And here's the thing, you got elected officials retweeting, talking about, oh, I guess Ole Miss is going to be where on my college visits for my kids. We're so bought into this that we're actually supporting that we don't understand that is an indictment of our character and it is a stain on our souls. How wild is that? Right? How wild is that? How wild is it that Joe Biden hasn't come out and said, yo, we're cutting all aid to Israel because clearly our weapons are being used to slaughter civilians. Right now, Hamas accepted a ceasefire. Israel said no, said, nah, we're going to go into Rafah no matter what. Right? But we are, because we're so particularly caught up in the rationalization part of that whiteness frame, we are allowing the conflation of Palestinian people and Hamas. And we're rationalizing the death of 40,000 people to do that, right? That's not disconnected. That's not disconnected from the police violence that we're still seeing. That's not disconnected from the legal cases that Trump is working on. That man has been warned over and over again about violating gag orders. Any other person would have been in jail. He is not in jail, right? This is what whiteness does. It is not interested in consistency. It's not interested in justice. It's not interested in that. It relies on the objectification of people and places and creation. It relies on science to justify the absence of what I would call our spiritual well-being. It rationalizes those things, and it holds up technology, particularly the technology of violence, as justification. And we are so bought in and steeped in that way, in that system of thought, that we literally are are using state violence to shut down protests on college campuses. If that doesn't bother you, if that doesn't irritate your soul, I don't know what will, right? And I don't want to say that though. I'm not offering that just to like try to make you feel bad or be like, oh, shame you into action. So I want to talk about this. I don't think that we all need to be out risking our safety and on college campuses. As a matter of fact, leave that to the college students, right? Like to the people in that community. We all have a community that we can do the same thing in. If you're at a happy hour, if you're at a family function, if you're in a team meeting at work, if you're talking to your children, or just in your circle, wherever it comes up, take the opportunity to act in integrity and work towards that connection, that spirituality symbol, mythos, harmonium framework, and understanding the world. Talk about why it's not okay for the United States to be sending billions of dollars in military aid to Israel for the execution of genocide, for 40,000 people to be slaughtered, the vast majority civilians. We have to talk about that. We have to talk about that. We have to be able to do that in our space. We don't need to go somewhere else to do that. If all of us focus on our own spheres of control and speak truth to power in that way at the happy hour, wherever you're at, the world will be better for it. And so I don't mean to overwhelm you with a whole bunch of stuff. I hope you're not I know it's overwhelming for sure. But when it gets like that, remember to breathe and remember we can only do what we can do in our sphere of control. And when we work in our sphere of control, we make a huge difference. Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you have any questions, holla, I'd love to talk to anybody about more of this. Feel free to email, follow on the social medias. Peace, y'all.